Your thank you page is probably the single most wasted asset in your entire business. Think about it. A prospect just gave you their phone number. They just completed your qualification form. They just put their time on your calendar. That's the most committed they have ever been. And what do most businesses respond with? Thanks, I'll see you on Thursday. That's it. Or then they are the complete other end of the spectrum. They throw 15 things at the prospect, 10 different videos to watch, and 5 different steps to complete before the call. And none of those approaches work. So I went through 37 thank you pages in the high ticket space to see what's actually working. And there were 4 specific things that actually got people to show up to calls and show up ready to buy. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through all 4 of those things, the order they need to go in, and why each one matters. So let's get into it. So the first thing you need to understand is that the thank you page is the peak of commitment. Now you have spent your entire marketing process trying to get people ready to book a call, trying to get them in the correct emotional state. But then, once they book a call on your calendar, then they are at the peak of their commitment. Then they are at the correct emotional state to actually buy from you, to become clients. But then, after they book a call, most people have nothing, so people lose that commitment. They look up competitors, they talk themselves out of it. So once they show up at the call, they are completely cold. They have lost all that commitment. They have lost all that intent. So now you start your sales calls at the same level where they met you the first time. So the entire purpose of the thank you page is to get people to retain that emotional state until the call. So that people's commitment and intent is as high during the call as it was when they booked the call. That's the purpose of the thank you page. And the thank you page also has a second objective. It's to get people to show up to the call in the correct way. You want them to have all their questions answered. You want them to know exactly what you do and how it works. Because before the booking, your funnel and your ads, well, their purpose was to get people to book a call. So there you talked about their pain points, their desires, and so on. But on the thank you page, you want to go more in depth about the logical stuff, how your process works, why it works, who they've helped, and so on. But this is where most get it wrong. So most thank you pages fall within 2 categories. Either they have way too little stuff or they have way too much stuff on there. Every element on a thank you page is about balance. It needs to be engineered around consumption. So if you have too little information on your thank you page, then prospects arrive cold. Then you require 45 minutes of education on every single call. That's why you have long sales cycles. That's why your reps can't close. And that's why you get questions like, what do you guys do? But if you have too much information, then people will be overwhelmed and you will have no consumption. People just scroll past everything, and if nothing gets watched, they learn nothing. So in both of these scenarios, people don't consume anything. Well, here on the left, you have no information for people to consume in the first place. But on the other side, you just have so much information that people are so overwhelmed, and then they don't consume anything. And that makes your thank you page completely useless. Your thank you page is only useful if people consume the stuff you have on there. So we need to engineer the thank you page in a way where we have the correct amount of information on there so that people don't become overwhelmed. And because we can't have an endless amount of information on there, we need to strategically choose what assets we have there. Obviously the best case scenario is if people watched, 20 videos, but that's not gonna happen. And the whole, core purpose behind the thank you page is that you want to do 80% of the selling before the call and only 20% of the selling during the call. But what most people do is that they have only 20% of the selling happening before the call, and they do 80% of the selling on the call itself. And this is the more standard approach. There must be a reason why it's called a sales call. But what you need to understand is that your marketing is scalable. It's repeatable. But your sales calls, they start from zero every single time. You have to always make your sales calls work. You have to always build trust from the ground up. You have to always educate your prospects. You have to always overcome objections. So what if you have a bad day? What if a best closer quits? Well, then you're completely screwed. So you want to front load all of your selling to your marketing. You want to front load all of the trust building, all of the education, all of the objection handling to before the call, because that is repeatable and that is scalable. And your thank you page does the biggest piece of that. So this way, everyone will show up to your call already knowing what you do, how it works. They have no questions, no objections. They just know everything because all of the selling that you usually did on the call, it's already made, it's already done. What if they knew exactly what you did, how your process worked, what results you got for other people? Well, then it becomes so much easier. And as you see with the math right here, it doesn't just help your close rate, but it also increases your show up rate. Because if people have no idea what you do, how your process works, well, then they are much less likely to actually show up to the call. Just think about it. Why would you show up to a call if you have no idea what they do, how their thing works? If you're very confused, then you're so much more likely to actually no-show. So if you do this selling before the call, it will not only increase your close rate, but also increase your show-up rate. So the two core objectives of the thank you page can be split into two parts. The first being increasing your show-up rate, and the second is to make your sales easier. And that means both shortening your sales cycle, so going from 2 or 3 call closes to 1 call closes, and going from 60-minute calls to only 45-minute calls, because you don't need to have 45 minutes of education on the call anymore. Sales call becomes just figuring out if they are fit to work with you. But you also get higher close rates because they have no objections, they have no questions before the call. All the questions are answered before, so they show up ready to buy. So these two are the only two objectives of the thank you page. It's the only two things that it needs to achieve. So everything on there is engineered around these two core things. So when I analyzed thank you pages, all of them fell into these three categories. The first being what I call the receipt. And this is the one where you have almost no information. You just say, thanks for booking a call. Your call is confirmed. You have nothing else on the thank you page. This is all that people get after booking a call. And it's pretty obvious why this doesn't work. But then also so many people try to be very, very clever and put so much stuff on the thank you page. And this is what I call the overwhelm. They just throw everything on there and actually nothing gets watched because there's so much stuff on there. But the best thank you pages, they were engineered for consumption. There wasn't too much stuff, so people actually consumed the content that was on there, and the content that was put on there was strategically chosen to increase shop rates and to make the sale easier. So the first thing that they had on there was the confirmation step. So how this works is obviously first to tell them that their call is booked, and you want to write beneath the exact time just to confirm to them what time they chose, because so many people just go on the calendar, click different time slots and forget which one they chose. But after that, you want to have two quick steps, and these two steps, their only purpose is to increase your show-up rate. But in some niches, having two steps right here will already be too much. People will already be overwhelmed. So this is something that depends on your niche. But if you only have one of these, make sure you have this step one. This step one is so much more important than step two. So step one is to reply yes to your text message. And this is to confirm their call. And this is a commitment device. That's the reason why we do this. We need people to actually commit to showing up to the call. And just booking the call is not enough commitment. We need them to actually confirm, to tell us, yes, I will show up. That's what's required. So on your thank you page, you want to have a literal button. You want to have a button like this that goes to their SMS, because you want to make it easy for them. So when they click this SMS button, it will open up their message app and it will have, yes already pre-written, so they can just click send. We want to make it as easy as possible. So this right here is what it looks like. Obviously, instantly once they book a call, you will send a booking confirmation. And in this booking confirmation text, you want to ask them to reply yes to the call. It will open up this same message thread where they then can send yes to confirm that they will show up to the call. And then what you want to do after this is you want to continue having a conversation with them. So this confirmation step does actually two things. Because the thing is that you want to build a personal connection with people before the call, because people buy from people. They don't buy from strangers. People buy from someone that they know, like, and trust. So by getting them to send you yes, you can start a conversation with them. After this message, you should hold a conversation with them and actually build a personal connection with them, because then they are so much more likely to show up and to close, because they know you. They will trust you by that stage. And then the second thing is to accept the email calendar invitation, because once they book a call, the call won't be added to their calendar automatically. And if people don't add the call to their calendar, there's a very high likelihood that they will forget it. So again, we want to have a button that they can click that then adds the call to their calendar. We want to make it as easy to them as possible. They just click yes and add the call to their calendar. So these two steps are to increase your show rate. But if you only have to choose one, choose the first one. The reply yes to our text is so important, because there has been studies that if someone replies yes, they have a 95% show up rate. But if they don't reply anything to you, if they don't text you anything, then they have a 50% show up rate. And obviously it varies depending on your niche and how you structure things. But it's very clear that if someone replies yes, they are so much more likely to actually show up to the call. Because again, then they have committed to showing up to the call. And people don't like to lie. So then the second thing that they all had was the main thank you page video. And this is actually the most important part of the entire thank you page. This is the video where you educate people on your methodology, how your process works, how you're different, and so on. And you need to make sure that everyone watches this video, because you want everyone who shows up to the call to be at the same level. It becomes so hard to close people if someone is here and someone is here, because then you need to have a completely different strategy on your call, because these people know nothing about you and these people know everything. So you need to make sure that everyone consumes this video. So how do you want to structure this? First of all, you don't want to make this too long. Around 10 to 20 minutes is a sweet spot. But then, first in the video, you want to obviously congratulate them booking a call, say that they are in the right place and so on. But after that, you want to explain what the next steps are and what they should expect from the call. So you want to tell them to reply yes to your text if they haven't already done so. Then you want to tell them to go and watch, the objection videos, which we'll come to, and the case study videos that I will come to. You want to literally explain what the next steps are, what they should do, and you should also explain what they should have with them when they come to the call. So if you're B2B, for example, you want them to know all their numbers. You want them to know their margin, how many leads they get, and so on. And let's say if you're a fitness coach, well, you want them to know their weight, their height, and so on. So you want them to know their numbers, because otherwise your call will be just a mess, because then you have to search the numbers and go on a scale during the call and so on. That's a complete mess. So you want them to be ready when they show up to the call. But then you also want to explain to them the structure of the call, what they should expect, because after people book a call, well, they have no idea what we'll talk about. And if people don't know what will happen, well, then they will be subconsciously a bit scared, and then they have a higher likelihood to no-show. But then after that, we come to the main part of this, thank you page video, which is the education. So I want to go brutally in depth about your methodology, how your process works, exactly what you do, exactly why it works, but then you also want to explain why you're different, how you're different from everyone else in your market. Ultimately, you want to answer all of these questions. One, what do you do? How does it work? Does it work for me? And what makes you different? So if you can answer all of these questions in the thank you page video, then you are in the right place. And the last thing about this thank you page video is that you should have the right tone. So you should frame yourself as a friend, not a salesman. Because ultimately, your job is not to sell them. Your job is to see if you are fit to work together. Because every time when you sell something, it's a mutual, trade. You work together. You benefit and they benefit. As everyone says, you should be like a doctor. You should be like a friend trying to help them. And if people see that you are a friend, if people see that you are actually trying to help them, well, then they will be relaxed. And if they're relaxed, they will trust you more. And that increases the likelihood that they will show up and also the likelihood that they will close because they trust you more. And without this video, prospects arrive cold. And the entire call becomes a 45-minute education session. So this video is very important and you need to structure it correctly. People shouldn't have any questions about what you do or how it works when they come to the call. That should all be answered. But then we come to the objection videos that I quickly showed you. So this is probably the juiciest part. So instead of handling all the same objections over and over and over again, on the thank you page, you should have separate videos for every single objection you get on your calls. You need to take the objections and questions you hear most often and record, a 1 to 3 minute video for each one and put that on your thank you page below this main thank you page video. And this is where so many people mess up. You shouldn't have more than 4 to 6 videos. And I know you probably get more than 4 to 6 objections, but again, if you put too much stuff on a thank you page, people will be overwhelmed and then they won't watch anything. So you need to strategically choose which questions you answer, which objections you pre-handle, and you should choose those that you hear most often. So just a few examples could be, how long does this take to implement? Will this work, for my unique situation? And for me, it could be, what if I tried other funnels before? What's the investment? And so on. And all these videos, as I said, they should be very short, only 1 to 3 minutes. And the structure of them is that at the beginning of the video, you should obviously answer the question and answer it fully, give the full answer to the question. But after that, you want to tie it back to working with you. Because these objection videos, they should be mini VSLs. Because as you remember with the graph I showed you, people's intent, it's the highest when they book a call. And if you have no thank you page, if you have no pre-call sequence, well then that intent, well then that commitment drops. So on your thank you page, you need to keep selling people. And you do that by making these videos mini VSLs. So first you answer the question and then you tie it back to working with you. You constantly want to keep, selling them. Because if you don't do that, then they will regret booking a call with you. And then they won't show up. And if you aren't sure which objections to pre-handle or which questions to answer, well, just take your 20 previous sales call transcripts and AI will extract your most common, objections and questions. And then you take 4 to 6 that come most frequently, and then you create these mini videos that answer them. And then the last thing you need to have is wired in case studies. And again, you shouldn't have too many. Most often, you only need 1 to 3 case studies on this page. And the very important thing with these case studies is that they need to be proof to the promise you made in your headline. So as a quick example, if you promise will increase your close rate, then all of these case studies should be, he lifted my close rate from X to Y. They need to be literal proof for what you promise, for your headline. And they need to all be structured in that way. So if your promise is, I'll book you 5 more calls per month, then your case studies can be, I scaled him from 30 to 100K per month. And this is what most people do. And that's completely wrong. Your case study should be proof for your promise. If your promise is, I will take you to 100K per month, well, then your case studies can be about that. But if your promise is, I'll I'll book you 5 more calls per month, then your case studies need to be, I booked him 7 more calls per month, I booked him 10 more calls per month, and so on. And this is how you structure them. You want to have a video, and then above the video, you want to have, a quick, title for the video, a name for the video. And the name could be, from 2 to 8 closes per month. Show up rate went from 58% to 87%. Sales cycle went from 21 days to 4 days. And this is the proof part for the thank you page. And this was also the last and fourth thing you need to have there. So just a quick, recap. What you want to have there, again, is the confirmation step to get that commitment before the call. You want to get them to reply yes to your text to confirm that they will show up. And then you want to have a conversation with them after it. Then you want them to accept the calendar invite. Then you want to have your main thank you page video. And this explains the next steps, what to expect from the call, and also does all of the education. Then you want to have your objection handling videos. And then you want to have your case studies. This is all you need to have, and it should be structured in this way. But this is the pre-call sequence that you want to have after the thank you page. And if you want more info about the pre-call sequence, well, I have other videos about that on my channel. But what you need to understand is that the pre-call sequence is built around the thank you page. Obviously, there are some parts in the pre-call sequence that are, standalone elements. But in your pre-call sequence, you want to constantly remind people to go back to the thank you page, to watch your main methodology videos, and to get their questions answered. First, what happens is that people confirm their call, with the text, and they will consume your thank you page. After that, you want to have value email number 1 plus a case study, and you want to link a YouTube video that solves exactly their problem. So in your qualification form, you probably have a question like, what are you struggling with, or something like that. And whatever people answer to that question, you want to send them a video that goes over that exact problem. And after that, as the founder, you want to send a personalized selfie video. And this builds so much trust because now you seem like a friend and you build, this personal connection with them. And in this video, you also want to transfer trust to your closer, because if you're not on the call, then it's pointless if they trust you. They will need to trust your closer. So you want to transfer that trust you have built to your salesperson. After that, your sales rep needs to send a loom, and it's also personalized for every single one. And the sales rep should show something that they have set up for the call. And then lastly, your final reminder plus agenda, and all of this leads to people being pre-sold and ready to close once they show up. And this is how the trust, transfers. So you as a founder, you get trust from the thank you page, and you also get trust from this personalized video. And then after you have got trust for you, as I said, you have to transfer that to the sales rep. And the correct thank you page and the correct pre-call sequence will kill, your no-shows. They will kill all the cold arrivals, who are you again, reps that can't close. These problems are solved with the correct thank you page and correct pre-call sequence. So if you now have any more questions, I will leave my Instagram in the description below. So feel free to shoot me a DM, and I will be more than happy to help you out. See you in the next one.